Minglaba, dear friends and stakeholders of the Myanmar tourism industry, um, it's a great pleasure for me to be the moderator of the panel of the Myanmar tourism marketing on this day. And first of all, I'd like to thank all the speakers from the international organizations present today with us for giving us your time and efforts and sharing your knowledge and experiences. The focus of the panel of today is to get the views and perspective of the international experts on tourism and who has been helping Myanmar, assisting Myanmar with the tourism development over the decades. First of all, I'd like to start with Dr. Nicole Weisler, who is a friend of Myanmar tourism, and she has been with Myanmar since 1996. She traveled to Myanmar on and off, and Nicole has been working in the responsible tourism field as a consultant, mainly in Southeast Asia, and she has been focusing her work on responsible tourism management and training, the implementation of corporate social responsibility, and poverty reduction. Nicole holds a master's degree in social anthropology and a PhD in responsible tourism from Leeds University in UK. Additionally, she is a licensed change management consultant focusing especially on cultural due diligence. As I've mentioned before, since 1996, Nicole has been working mainly for the German corporation GIZ, International Trade Center, and Hans Seidel Foundation as a short or long-term expert in close cooperation with Ministry of Hotels and Tourism in Myanmar, and also with Myanmar Tourism Federation, and she supports the local registered NGO Myanmar Responsible Tourism Institute as an advisor. Furthermore, since this year, she is member of Mekong Tourism Advisory Board. To remind you of, she has co-authored the publications for tourism in Myanmar, namely Responsible Tourism Policy and Policy on Community Involvement in Tourism. Last but not least, Tourism Master Plan 2013-2020. Nicole, I'd like to start with you to find out what can be done to improve destination management at national and local levels. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Kopio. And hello and good morning from Berlin to all of you. Before I'm going to answer this very complex question, just to inform you, I was traveling by end of February to Germany, was hoping to come back to Myanmar by mid of March latest, together with my husband. And since then, we are here in Berlin, which is also fine. But I'm really, really looking forward to come back to Myanmar, but let's see when it's going to happen. I'm here now speaking also on behalf of ITC, because beside GIZ and beside Hans Seidel Foundation, I have been starting to work also with ITC in Southern Shan State. I'm based normally most of the time in Taunji, and I'm going to talk also a little bit about what kind of impacts this COVID situation also has now on our work in Southern Shan State. But coming back to your question, what about destination management? What needs to be done? Again, this is not a question which can be easily answered. I think this is clear for all of us. But what I heard in the background is that there's more and more the idea raising that there should be more destination management organizations coming up, either at national level or at local level. Personally, I think this is a good idea. Definitely, because especially at local, at regional level, it gives the regions more flexibility to promote their and more strength to promote their own areas. What I would recommend for Myanmar is before there is now something like the announcement, let's set up as many DMOs as possible. First, maybe also to clarify what is the meaning of a DMO for us here in Myanmar, what could be done in our context, what is actually possible, because in many other countries, DMOs are actually really public-private sector organizations with their own offices, with their own full-time staff. They are getting subsidized by the government or by bed tax or by membership fees, and there are different business models. And they also have, of course, these kind of DMOs have board members which are coming from the private sector and also from the public sector. My understanding is at the moment that here in Myanmar, what in other contexts are the board members are those who are actually also working in these DMOs. And I'm still not sure if this is going to function, because when you have different heads and different positions, I really stress on the point that yes, please go ahead with the discussion to have more DMOs, especially at regional level, but think also about the business model, about proper offices, about proper budgets. My recommendation.
Thank you, Nichols. I agree with your points. And
can I add one more
Please.
point? Sorry. What else is, I think, very important is we have, Myanmar has this new tourism law. And from my understanding, in this tourism law, DMOs are not really mentioned. And the latest version of the tourism bylaws, which are still not approved from my knowledge, the latest version I'm aware of, also DMOs are not having a clear role here. And what needs to be done if there's really now a push to establish DMOs in Myanmar is really to clarify what is the difference of these state tourism committees now and the DMOs. Otherwise, there might be an overlap of tasks and responsibilities, and a little bit at the final end, that because then nobody feels responsible, because this should be the DMO should do it, and the other said no, it should be actually the state tourism committee. There needs to be a clear guidelines what are actually the tasks of these two institutions, which can be part, for example, of a bylaw. Thanks.
Thank you, Nicole. Again, I agree with your points discussed. I did my homework, and this morning I had a chat with Uzea Muan, the director of the Ministry of Hotels and Tourism, who is in charge of drawing up the roadmap for the tourism sector to survive and to reopen. And in that roadmap, he mentioned that DMOs are very important and they will be established as soon as possible, including the private sector stakeholders and also governmental officials and also the member of parliaments in each destination. And I believe like you have mentioned, the authorities and tasks will be clearly defined for each members, and we will soon see what will be taking place. And I do think the DMOs will be driving engines for the development of Myanmar tourism. Thank you. Next is Mrs. Libby Owen Edmonds. She is, just a moment, let me go back to the information needed. Just a moment. She is a highly experienced international specialist on sustainable tourism, private sector development, and marketing. Libby lived 10 years in Sri Lanka, 5 years in Pakistan, and 5 years in Indonesia, and has been working at the vanguard of responsible and sustainable tourism planning and development, influencing businesses and governments to adopt more inclusive and sustainable strategies. In Myanmar, she's been working across a range of tourism issues since 2015 for organizations such as Swiss Contacts, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and currently with the International Finance Corporation, IFC. And her areas of expertise for international development agencies include private and public sector sustainable tourism strategy and investment in sustainable tourism, and a wealth of experience in a range of niche market segments. She holds a Bachelor in Commerce from the University of Sydney, Australia, and Master of Science, Master's degree of Science in Sustainable Tourism Management, Leeds University in UK, and a postgrad diploma in Sustainable Value Chains from the University of Cambridge, UK. Libby, it's a great pleasure to include you today to this panel today. I'd like to ask you, how should Myanmar approach destination planning and development in the age of COVID-19? Of course, when Myanmar can control the COVID-19.
Thanks, Joe. Great to be a part of the panel. Mingalabar, everyone who's out there and listening. I'm sitting here in Sydney and very much wish I was sitting in Myanmar. But as Nicole said, she's stuck in Berlin. We're all stuck where we're stuck. So very good question. I think what COVID has presented us all in tourism is a once in a lifetime opportunity. So rather than be, I think we all understand the impacts. The impacts have been devastating, not just for Myanmar, but across Asia and the globe. But I do believe we have to think of this as an opportunity. And I believe it's presenting a once in a lifetime opportunity, because we may not have another chance to rethink and redesign the tourism industry as it should be, and possibly correct past mistakes as we have in this current pause now. More than ever, a demand-driven approach to tourism and planning development, I believe, is required. And what does that mean? It means understanding the dynamics of both current and future tourism demand, which is really, really important. I think all too often we either focus on current demand, but we don't look to the future and potentially the trends and what the value of the demand that we have could bring us or is currently bringing us. Many destinations and businesses, I think, have predominantly been supply driven. So build a hotel and guests will come, open a tour operator and guests will come. And it comes back to, in the age of COVID, I think destinations and businesses need to build resilience and sustainability more than ever. And so this very much supply-driven approach opens us up to many risks. And we've seen that certainly in Myanmar with the Rakhine crisis. We're seeing it now. By taking a demand-driven approach, I think destinations and their businesses can understand which market segments show the potential for the highest value of growth. So what does it mean? I mean, all too often, I think in Myanmar, we say, and at the frustration of the private sector, all of us working in tourism, that we don't have the data available. But at some point, I believe we have to invest in making sure we have the data, the market insights, we start tracking the trends so that we can make the shift from a supply-driven, source market-driven destination and planning to a much more demand-driven vision. If we understand future demand, and by future demand, I mean, how many people do we think can come to a destination in 5 years, 10 years, and 25 years? And look at various different scenarios, the best case, the worst case. What could happen if another pandemic came along? What that means is we can then say, well, hang on, okay, if we're only expecting another 5 million or another 1 million or another 500,000, what are the investments that are needed? Rather than, as I said, let's build hotels, let's build guest houses. It's really important to understand how many rooms do we actually need in the future? What are the products and services that are needed if we've identified our priority market segments? How many people need to be trained and in what skills if we're focusing on priority market segments of high value? So in times of crisis, like we're in at the moment, information and data are critical. And I think those destinations that keep on top of trends and really focus on looking at demand, not just currently, but to the future, and build and plan their tourism around that, will come out on top and ultimately be a lot more resilient.
Very good, Libby. I find it very encouraging, because an institution like IFC is with us, and I learned that 2 weeks ago you have already been able to sign an MOU with the Ministry of Hotels and Tourism, and I do believe that what is lacking in our industry is very important. Like you said, data is critical, and we lack a lot of decision-making facilities like data. And in the post-COVID era, we do need to focus on such collecting viable data sets in order to make the proper decisions to develop the Myanmar tourism. Thank you.
Yeah. If I can add,
yes,
sorry,
please.
if I could just add some examples of destinations who have invested the time in this. I mean, Sri Lanka comes to mind, certainly. So Sri Lanka is a country that has had a civil conflict that finished in 2009. It's had a tsunami. It's had unfortunate Easter bombings last year. And now it's also faced with a pandemic crisis. And I think certainly post their conflict, that was very much supply-driven tourism sector, because they relied on pent-up demand after this 20-year conflict. And then 18 months ago, last year, when they had the bombings, their sector was decimated again. And since then, they have realized that investing in understanding future demand and prioritizing your market segments can help build a more resilient destination. Likewise, in Indonesia, they're trying to look beyond Bali. And as a result, they're taking a very demand-driven. They're investing, 2 years worth of understanding what potential demand looks like in other destinations, and which the priority destination should be, and therefore which the priority market segment should be. So this is not a new concept. I just think it's something we all need to think about, rather than obviously supply and demand work together, but focus much more on a demand-driven approach.
Great. You're right. Business is all about demand and supply. And for the time being, we see very, very few chances to create the demand because of the COVID. And actually, coronavirus is a very huge game changer, and it will create unprecedented things throughout the economies of the countries. And Myanmar needs to work very, very, very hard to create the demand and manage the business in the demand-driven perspective. Thank you very much. Next, I'd like to talk about our friend, Mr. Jens Trenhardt, the Executive Director of the Mekong Tourism Coordination Office. I've known Jens over 1 decade, and he is a professional and with 25 years of international travel, tourism, and hospitality experience. In 1999, Mr. Trenhardt founded Chameleon Strategies, an affiliate member of the World Tourism Organization, advising tourism organizations and travel businesses in leveraging digital engagement to drive sustainability. Previously, he co-founded leading China travel marketing agency named Dragon Trail and headed up marketing strategy and digital departments at Fairmont Hotels and Resorts in Canada, and also Canadian Tourism Commission, which is widely known as CTC, and Dusit International. He was appointed by the Tourism Ministries of Cambodia, Laos, PDR, Myanmar, People's Republic of China, Thailand, and Vietnam to head the Mekong Tourism Coordination Office since 2014. And he has since spearheaded various award-winning initiatives. Mr. Trenhardt has been recognized as one of the top 25 most extraordinary minds in travel and hospitality. And he has an MBA graduate he is an MBA graduate of Cornell University and currently pursuing his doctorate in tourism at the Hong Kong Polytechnic University. Jens, I'd like to invite you to discuss a hot topic about what currently New Zealand and Australia is doing. It's creating travel bubbles on a bilateral basis. In the countries you are now trying to manage the tourism with, in the Mekong, along the Mekong River, do you see an opportunity for us to create such travel bubbles? Jens? You need to unmute.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Kopio, and thank you, the Myanmar Tourism Marketing Association, for inviting me and the Mekong Tourism Coordinating Office to be part of this important panel. I think Mekong Tourism Federation and Mekong Tourism Marketing Association has done a great job in putting these seminars and webinars together. And obviously now with Zoom and other systems like that, I think it's very easy to get together, which before always seemed to be a problem. So I think it's great, and thank you for moderating this panel. To your question, I think actually many people probably haven't heard about travel bubbles and travel bridges before this pandemic. I think it's become a new buzzword. But if you think about it, actually, and when I first met you over 10 years ago, I mean, this is what we talked about, right? I mean, the regional tourism collaboration is nothing else than really a travel bubble, which is looking to drive regional tourism collaboration. It's driving bilateral relationships. It's also looking at cooperating together in driving tourism cross-border. We have various products from cross-border multi-country journeys and other fam trips and so on. So in this pandemic, obviously, as it's hard to predict travel sentiments post-COVID-19, and a lot of people seem to have crystal balls handy, I think, common sense prevails. In the end, people want to stay safe and they want to have convenience. So I mean, when we now look at the new reality where, maybe have to go to the airport 4 hours earlier. You need to have health certificates, and I don't know what I just read this morning, what you need if you want to enter Thailand again. And this you know, probably seems more challenging than doing a doctorate thesis. I mean, it doesn't look like a fun trip. So you think probably, you know, more than twice before you get on a plane and travel to a destination. And then second, obviously, the virus is still around. You know, I mean, I talked to my friend Achem Munz, who's a, you know, very well known in Myanmar through the Heinz Seidel Foundation. And we talked about, I mean, you know, people do get infected that do get on flights today. So I think, you know, in the end, there are obviously new normals, and you know, mitigating these risks and making it more comfortable for people to travel, you know, is a given. So, you know, building these travel bridges and travel bubbles, I think makes sense. You know, I think in the short term, I think there are not a lot of people that want to get on a, you know, 12, 13-hour flight if they don't have to, going to the airport if it's not absolutely necessary. You know, so I think going cross-border, let's say, you know, from you know, Laos to Cambodia, from Myanmar to Thailand, you know, whatever it might be, you know, might be, you know, something that could drive, that could accelerate after domestic tourism, you know. So New Zealand is doing it already. You mentioned that Australia and New Zealand, they're creating some kind of travel bubble that makes a lot of sense. The Baltic states of Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia have created some kind of travel bubble. And there might be other countries like Poland that may join this travel bubble. There are discussions with Germany and Austria. You know, so I think all these make sense. And if you look at it, the governments of Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Thailand, Vietnam, and China have invested over the last almost 25 years in the GMS regional collaboration, Greater Mekong Sub-region. And I think now is the time where actually it really comes to bear. All that investment that has been developed, you know, this is something, a collaboration like this, you cannot copy in a day or two, or, you know, in a couple of months. This has been developed over years. And I think now is the time to really leverage this collaboration and what has been done over the years, you know. So I think, you know, everyone is looking at China, and China could be obviously a solution, but also China, it could be a solution for this region because it is fairly close and it's actually part of the GMS, you know. And when we look at China, normally people talk about China as one travel segment, and you know, many people that have worked in the Chinese market know it's multi-segment. You know, I mean, you know, someone traveling, you know, from Yunnan to Myanmar, for example, you know, that's just hopping across the border, and it's totally different than someone traveling from Beijing to Vietnam, for example. You know, so I think that's also something to consider. And also, I think, you know, when we look at the Chinese traveler, you know, there are various different segments, and the younger ones might be earlier ready to travel actually to the region. But, you know, travel segments, and I show a slide later on that shows actually that the main destinations for Chinese travelers that people want to visit are in Southeast Asia and in the GMS, you know, so that's obviously a big opportunity. But on the other hand, you know, we do know that Chinese travelers, you know, when they travel, they want to feel safe. They compare a lot of the measurements to what's going on at home. And in China, the measurements are quite stringent, very controlled, and quite successful. You know, so that will be a measurement for some destinations to live up to. But I mean, going back to your question, and not to belabor the point, I think, you know, for the Mekong region, and if you extend that into ASEAN as well, I think it's probably the biggest opportunity our region has to accelerate growth, you know. So I think that, you know, looking at Europe and North America and Australia as long-haul markets, I think won't be a short-term solution. I think China will be one solution, but it shouldn't be the end-all solution, you know. And also, as Libby said before, I completely agree with her. I think now is the time to reset. There have been a lot of mistakes being made when it comes to marketing to Chinese consumers. This is now the opportunity also to kind of rethink a China strategy and look at not at low cost $0 tours, but really looking at segmented travel strategy for the Chinese market, creating value, creating experiences that make sense and that drive yield, and also help us manage the destinations. You know, as you know, and I'll mention that a little bit later, you know, our theme for the Mekong Tourism Forum is, you know, achieving balanced tourism. And I say now what we need to look at is a balanced recovery. Thank you.
Thank you, Jens. It's very informative what you have discussed. Since you have been in China and you are regarded as a Chinese specialist as well, and you know, you have been helping the Mekong River countries with the development of the tourism. Yeah, we do see opportunities now. With your explanation, we do see that it will be beneficial for the countries to make the agreements to create the travel bubbles, of course, on bilateral basis. This morning I read a news about Singapore and China making an agreement for first lanes, you know, for the arrival of the officials, of course, for the essential travel, and for the flights directly from the five provinces of China to Singapore. We do need to attract the Chinese visitors to Myanmar as well. We have to compete with our neighboring countries to get the market share for from China. And a few weeks ago, Ministry of Hotels and Tourism made an ad hoc meeting with the Chinese tour operators doing business in Myanmar to ensure that the $0 business will not be coming back again to Myanmar, and to manage it proactively and ensure that Myanmar will be getting the suitable slice of the market from out of China. Thank you very much for your discussion. And next, I'd like to invite Mrs. Janet Schapenzeel. Janet has been a friend of Myanmar as well, and she is a senior program manager at CBI, the Center for the Imports from Developing Countries of the Netherlands. And CBI is a Dutch government program for export promotion working in 30 countries in 14 sectors. And tourism is one of those sectors in Myanmar that CBI is helping with. Janet has been working with Myanmar tourism sector since 2016 in partnership with the ITC, which is International Trade Center of the World Trade Organization. And CBI focuses on coaching tour operators of Myanmar to increase their tourism business with the European market, and providing technical assistance to tourism organizations, namely Myanmar Tourism Marketing, Union of Myanmar Travel Association, and Ministry of Hotels and Tourism. Janet, you have been helping us to train the DMCs, especially the small stakeholders, small enterprises with the market access. So can you shed a light on the topic of from a buyer's perspective, which market trend do you expect in the post-COVID situation?
Thank you, Pio. Thank you. Mingalabar, and good afternoon to everybody tuning in to this panel. Many thanks to MTM for organizing this series of panels, which is a very powerful instrument to provide information to the industry. This panel, I find myself among people with very impressive curriculums, and experiences in the tourism industry. Myself, I have a master in economics theory and I'm trained as a diplomat, so I'm from a slightly different background. But from my CBI background, what do? We know the market, especially European market is our specialization. So that's also what I want to focus on. But you can never see any market in isolation, especially in these times with such unprecedented crisis. So the buyer's perspective. What are the expectations after the crisis eases down in the post-COVID era? It's the $1 million question. And it's all about the timelines. First of all, the good news. Yes, they will come back. Yes, they will travel again. And yes, the level of tourists coming to Myanmar will be back at normal levels. But $1 million questions, the timing. When will this happen? And that's the bad news. It's not going to happen soon. Part of the season of this year was lost. Next season, October to April, will be lost for the largest part. Very painful. And then after that, it will come back again. But it takes time. Why? It's a trust issue. In these times, the tourists have lost trust, so they need to regain the trust, especially for long-haul traveling. So what will we see? Very simple. First of all, domestic tourism will start again. Second of all, regional tourism, because it's much easier to travel to your neighbor country than to travel halfway around the world. And this is also a reason why this is an excellent time for the Mekong bubble to develop further. For Asian destinations, also Australia will be a very interesting market, which might very well pick up first. So you have the Chinese, Japanese, Korean markets. Looking at the buyer's perspective, looking at the demand-driven approach, what Libby was talking about, what do we expect for kind of travelers coming back? First of all, it will be the adventure travelers. That's very simple. They like to take risks, so they are more inclined to travel, to take the plane for a long-haul destination and to come back to Myanmar. This will be both FITs and business to business. But there's a big difference. The adventure tourist will like to travel in small groups. That's new. In the post-COVID era, small groups. With the small groups, which is less risk, it's also the family travel, which will probably pick up. Because your family nucleus, it's your core and you trust them and you know about the health situation they're in. So traveling with your family will pick up. Besides also, it's comforting to have your loved ones close to you when you are in a situation coming out of actually a stressful situation. So small adventures, small groups, family travel. But what do they want to do? They want to have experiential journeys. They want to have once in a lifetime experiences. So you need to offer something new. You need to change the product. And I like to refer at this point also to the panel with Edwin from Kiri and Mr. Lawson from the Sampan Travel, who stated exactly the same. Make sure that you go into the areas and the destinations. And then very important, it will be responsible travel. Mass tourism, just laying on the beach or going to see only highlights, will most probably lose a lot of momentum. Sustainable, this is the time to pick up sustainable travel and to develop it more. The clients, the tourists, they are now in a situation of stress. They're not happy with the governments because they're either doing too much lockdown or they're doing not enough lockdown, or they didn't do enough lockdown, or they did too much. So all of this will make them start thinking for themselves and thinking to change the world. And to change the world, if you look at tourism, it will all be picking up in the sustainable direction, which is in line with the adventure travel, the nature, the wildlife, more trekking, small groups, family travel. Okay, I give it back to you, Pio.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you for giving answers to the $1 million question. We agree as a tour company, as I run a tour company, I can agree you more with the selection of the segments for family travel and adventure travelers, and most probably we may also try to get smaller group tours, which will be not more than 9 to 10 travelers in a small group. I'd like to show the viewers what CBI has recently introduced. CBI has prepared a document, for the post-COVID-19 era for the tourism sector. Just a moment, let me share my screen. It takes some time, just a moment. Screen share, and here we are. The viewers, please do visit the website of the CBI, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Dutch government. There is an interesting document how to respond to COVID-19 in the tourism sector. It's a document, so we cannot share you through the Zoom, but Myanmar Tourism Marketing can give you the link afterwards. And there are very important points as content of that document. It's how to survive during this current challenging time, and how to set your business in preparation for the post-COVID era. So please do not fail to visit that website and download that document. It will be very beneficial for your business to follow the steps given in that document. For the next round, I'd like to start again with Nicole. Here we have discussed a number of topics, and I'd like to take another perspective of yours to how do you see to encourage a stronger cooperation and communication between the development agencies like DIZ and ITC, and even IFC, and tourism associations like MTF and Ministry of Hotels and Tourism?
I think that in these pandemic times, and in order to prepare really for the post-pandemic period, it would be a very good idea to set up regular round meetings among these three groups: development agencies, partners, the private tourism sector, and MOHT. Because it's about cooperation, communication, exchanging information. But it's also about, for example, in the case of ITC, for the project in Southern Shan State, for example, we get money from the Swiss government. And we have been already contacted by the Swiss government, asked, how do you now continue with your project? Are you planning to change it? and it's for us, it would be much better and easier to give here a clear response by saying, yeah, we already had here also a discussion with the private sector and with MOHT, and this is what we actually plan to do. So I think this kind of setup would be very helpful, especially also to gain more information. And gaining more information is also what is related, what Libby has been mentioning. Yes, I also think that we need much more data research, yeah, here in Myanmar. It's quite often that still we are doing something without having any data where we can rely on. And here I would even have another stakeholder on board, and these are the universities. We should not ignore anymore the universities who are teaching bachelor in tourism. We have now Yangon University of Economics who have started a master program. Let's invite them as well, and then there might be opportunities even to come up with research programs in cooperation with these universities. But let's work together. This is what I would like to encourage all of us and stress. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Nicole. You are right. The associations and the international organizations has been working together since the 2011, I would say, closely. And this coronavirus is a big game changer. And if I'm not mistaken, an organization like Myanmar Tourism Federation is now planning to transform itself into the next level. And we will have to wait and see which direction Myanmar tourism will be developed, and the associations will be transformed in order to have a more efficient efficient development and improvements for the businesses. Thank you. I'd like
you were talking about efficiency, and I think this is an important topic. It's not, I'm talking to Libby, I'm talking to Jens, I'm talking to Jeanette, but we are always talking one A to B. Yeah, what is much more important, and this is time consuming as well. Mm-hmm. From my point of view, would be much more efficient is really to have these kind of round meetings where in a concentrated way, we all talk to each other for 2 hours, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and I'm sure the outcome will be much, much higher.
Exactly. With the advent of the technology like Zoom, it's possible to do such a meeting from all corners of the globe. May I invite Libby to step in and contribute what Nicole has just discussed?
Absolutely. I think it seems to be one of the sort of simplest things on paper is to get together and communicate and be transparent and avoid duplication and create synergies. But the reality is, and I don't just think it's tourism, but I've seen this in many other sectors as well, it's really challenging to not just get the development agencies, but to get the holistically all the partners, whether it's government, private sector representation, and the international development community together. And I think, Nicole, you're totally right. We need to kickstart this and use this opportunity now for all of us to have these round tables and move beyond just us talking one-to-one and keeping up to speed of what we're doing. I think that's super important. I think from a tourism perspective, what we also have to take into consideration in terms of destination planning, development, and the importance of coordination in that is that when we think about developing destinations, it's not just the Ministry of Tourism. It's not just us as tourism professionals that need to be engaged. There are many other ministries and skill sets, whether that's town planning, spatial planning, infrastructure, roads, airports, all those types of things. And I think that's where in many tourism industries across Asia and many countries is we focus too much on tourism together talking when that happens, but we often forget that actually we have to take a holistic approach, because when we're talking about destination management, it's often the ministry's role is around licensing and marketing, but they may not have necessarily the control in terms of looking at expanding infrastructure, unless in many countries sometimes it's a dedicated tourism development zone. And so I think we need to also consider, first step, yes, all of tourism to talk, but we need to think about a holistic approach and bringing in other specializations to ensure that destinations and that coordination is much more realistic and not just focused on the role of the Ministry of Hotels and Tourism, but we engage more broadly.
Exactly. What I have in mind is same as your statement. We cannot just rely on the Ministry of Hotels and Tourism. Actually, tourism is a business, and it's mainly operated by the private sector stakeholders. So, however, we do rely on the Ministry of Hotels and Tourism to regulate the whole industry and lead us to the right direction. And apart from that, we have to make our own efforts to develop the industry by ourselves. Thank you. Thank you for your contribution. Next, I'd like to invite Jens again. Jens being the Executive Director for the MTCO, which is Mekong Tourism Coordination Office, coordinating sustainable proper tourism development projects in the Mekong region in line with the United Nations Millennium Development Goals, and helping the member states with the marketing and promotion of the Mekong region as a single travel tourism destination. I'd like to invite you to discuss how do you see to take a balanced approach for the recovery from the COVID, and which factors do we need to focus on?
Thank you, Pyo. I think the most important thing is, as Nicole already mentioned, is collaboration. And that was the first thing actually that we've done. We created, or re-established, I should say, the Mekong Tourism Advisory Group, METAC. Nicole is a member, but quite a few professionals from Myanmar are active members, including actually U Taeyong, former Minister of Hotels and Tourism, who is probably one of our most active members, and really is driving quite a few of these initiatives and making sure that that Myanmar is involved in those. But as we said, I mean, collaboration is now the key, and discussing, sharing is fundamental. We need to work on this together. And even though METAC wasn't established for COVID or for recovery, obviously that's now the prime focus, but it's really around development of tourism in a responsible way overall, and engaging people into our initiatives and projects. But what we have done there, and just to kind of make this a corner point, because I think that's the foundation of really coming together, is we now have 3 different formats of meetings. And this has come a little bit through the learnings that we've had. So, I mean, now we have where we look at country updates, where we have 3 countries giving an update driven by the ministries. And then also the private sector can also contribute to that. So that actually is quite good. If it's 6 countries, it's a little bit too much, but 3 countries, so we split it up. The second format of the meeting that we split up is what we call strategy roundtables, as Libby just mentioned, bringing people together and focusing on one topic. So we have one coming up actually next week, our first one with Anna Pollack, who some of you know as being a driving force when it comes to responsible tourism. She used to be a a keynote speaker at the Mekong Tourism Forum in Laos. And I used to work with Anna at the Canadian Tourism Commission together. So we've been friends for many, many years. So, I mean, but she really is a visionary when it comes to this kind of topic. And it's really designed to have a virtual strategy roundtable. So it's not going to be a webinar, but it's going to be about discussion that an expert like that facilitates. The next one will be with Jeffrey Littman. Many of you know, former Deputy Secretary General of the World Tourism Organization, UNWTO, first President and CEO of the World Travel Tourism Council, WTTC, Executive Director at IATA, and I could go on. But now really his thing now really focusing on climate change and really that we don't forget climate change in all of this. So it's going to be another important strategy roundtable. And the third format is on basically webinars. We've done one with Forward Keys where then basically someone is sharing information, data or something to an audience. This won't be too interactive, but more the webinar format. We don't do a lot of webinars because I think there are already millions of webinars around. The world doesn't need more. But if we do feel that there is a good content, we will do it. So beginning of July, we will actually do one on China. And I'll talk about this a little bit later. Now, to come back to your question a little bit more specific, health, you know, and I think when we talk about health, actually we talk about trust, you know. Now, Thailand has almost like changed their entire branding from Amazing Thailand to Amazing Trusted Thailand. And with that, they have created a health certification together with, I think, the Ministry of Public Health and a couple other ministries, which I think is really the right initiative at this point. It's very easy to say, okay, we're going to create some health standards and measurements. But even now I'm in Bangkok, sometimes I go out to a restaurant and it's very inconsistent and many things are not enforced, you know. Now you may care or not care, but I mean, that doesn't drive credibility and it doesn't drive trust if it's not enforced and if there are no guidelines, you know. So for TAT and Thailand to give labels and say, yes, you know, this establishment is meeting these different requirements and get this label, I think that's a big step forward. WTTC, the World Travel Tourism Council, just launched a global health safety label, you know. Probably a lot harder to enforce, but definitely the right thing for WTTC to do, because they obviously have the members with the big organizations from Hilton, Marriott, the big airlines and so on, to drive this through. I saw a question coming in that I think someone just sent on our chat, which I think is right on. Will there be a health certification for the region? And I think it's a good point, because I think, you know, it's not about Myanmar or Thailand or Cambodia or Laos or Vietnam. It's about the region, you know, so we need to come together. There needs to be some consistency. And I think looking at either what Thailand has done and extending that into other member countries, or looking at what WTTC has done on a global level and bringing it down to the regional level, either these models should be something that we should look at. And then modify it for our region. But I don't think that we need to create something specific or different or new. I think we need to leverage that has been done already with other organizations, and then either adopt it, extend it, and then if necessary, modify it. You know. The third point to your question I want to make is really, and I think Libby talked about it in her first point, it's, resetting tourism. You know, we have been doing a lot of work when it comes to reducing single-use plastic. And now this is already being forgotten with a lot of organizations. We have a lot of delivery services and we see more and more plastic and so on. And that's fine, right? That's natural. I mean, you know, it's kind of like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you know. Reducing plastic might not be the most important thing on people's mind, even though it should be. But also the other thing is climate change, right? I mean, I think, and that's related to that, because this is not going to change. And even though now, obviously, there has been a reduction in carbon offsets during this pandemic, because less traffic, less air traffic, and all of that. But I guess that's just a couple months, and that's not going to really stop what has been created over the last a few decades. So I think when we look at resetting tourism and creating recovery strategies, it can't be about COVID alone. It needs to be a holistic strategy that includes climate change. As Jeffrey Lippman said when I just talked to him on the phone the other day, and this is actually going to be the theme of our strategy roundtable with him, it's about walking and chewing gum at the same time. So it's not about just walking and forgetting to chew gum. We need to do both, and if we don't do both, on one hand there will be another pandemic. I think that's just natural, because this hasn't been the first viral outbreak. But number two, climate change won't stop. This is an existential problem that needs to be solved, and we all need to work on this together. So if you think about it, the whole COVID pandemic or crisis is almost like a warm-up phase. To on one hand make sure that we can handle these pandemics better in the future, and number two, learning how to really now combat climate change and single-use plastic and all these other issues that really are big problems, for our environment.
Very good. Again, Jens, very comprehensive answers given. I would like to. I think I don't need to wrap up what you have just mentioned. It's very comprehensive, and the viewers will be able to grasp what they would like to take home. So I would quickly like to move on to Janet. Janet, you need to unmute.
Yes.
You have touched upon the buyer's perspective in the previous question, and I'd like to also shed another light on the buyer's behavior. Do you expect any fundamental changes when looking at the long-haul buyers?
Yes, thank you, Pio. For sure. There's going to be fundamental changes, and I touched upon some of the changing target markets. The game changer is going to be driven by technology. What's happening is that you see the use of digital technology more and more. These panels are an example. Nicole's request or her advice for roundtable sessions with donors is another example. If you look half a year ago, everybody would be like, how to do that? But now we are experienced in how to use this technology and how to get our message across. The key word when you look at post-COVID era is trust, regaining trust. Before all this happened, it was very difficult for us to establish trust by digital means. You always needed to see meetings with people I've never known, and it works. So it will work for tourism. This is important. It will work for tourism. It will work for your buyers and your buyer meetings. So there's another effect. That's the trade fairs. The trade fairs is a big event. It will change at least for the first 1 to 3 years, because ITB, I'm not even talking about WTM, but ITB 2021, it's a big event. It needs to be smaller. So it was very effective to have a condensed number of meetings in this 1 week. it's not going to happen anymore because people will not trust again to go with such big numbers in one place. So it will be replaced by, let's say, a specific mission, a smaller group roadshow, for example, or as a supplier in Myanmar, you just go, you fix your meetings, and you take a tour around Europe or around China or Australia, and you go out and meet them. Then you are in a smaller group and they feel safe and they will meet you. So this will be a game changer, because I think when next year or when in the time coming, we see this works and this is effective and it saves you time, it will stay. Very simple. So technology is a game changer. Another effect there is that there is less contact between people. So what do you see? Technology to enable contact, less payments, the digital payments, payment system. You will see that the technology to have experiences from home with digital technology, it will increase. For example, if you're in the high-end market and somebody is thinking about taking a trip to, which will be expensive, you can offer them the experience, virtual reality experience. They can already see what they do, what they're going to do. But then you need to redesign and feed it in. So you give the virtual experience to your clients, take back their feedback, and offer a better, higher quality product. So the game changer, technology. Digital marketing. Yes, this is the time. Don't wait. And there is a difference between marketing and selling, because now is not the time to sell. Nobody wants to book a trip right now. Now is the time to do your marketing and to make sure they are dreaming about Myanmar and about your product packages. The tourists, they are dreaming now, but when the markets open up, they will travel to their dream. So you better catch on to them. And that starts now. So that's the game changer. Then there were a few questions I wanted to address a little bit. Yeah, trust again. The tourists will come back and they will travel, first of all, to the countries who have proven and shown that they're able to manage a crisis. So it is very important now at this time to show what you do and to show which measures you have taken. This is at the individual business level the case. So show on your website what measures you take with regard to health, with regard to your system organization, and make it transparent, communicate it. The government can be a great help for Myanmar at this point, for standard operating procedures, for showing as government that you are in charge and you are implementing measures. So this could be a very effective joint action, and that action needs to be taken now. This is the time. And I see here in Europe, and I'm sure Nicole sees the same, and also in Australia back there, we are dreaming, and I have some friends and they're like, oh, I'm looking at the websites where I want to go next, when I can travel again. And that is in Europe now. They're looking at destinations in Europe. Where am I going to drive to? By car. But this is the first step. And then later they will come and they will do the long haul. And for the regional market, it's different. They will also start to look at their neighboring countries. Okay. Then there was a question, which markets to target first? I will leave that one to Libby, but I just want to say, you need to reset your strategy. It's up to you which market to target first, and you need to use the data for it. Find the data, it is somewhere there, or at least find indicators, and then use that to think about your product, your supply, then your target group, and then reset your strategy. So I'll leave it at that, Pio.
Okay. Thank you, Janet. Another very comprehensive answer, taken I believe the small scale stakeholders will find it very useful with your answers. They will, if they follow your advices, they will get out of the current doldrum as fast as possible. I would like to invite once again Libby, because already Janet has referred part of the answer to Libby. I'd like to quickly go back to you. What should the tourism industry in Myanmar be thinking about in order to be market ready post-COVID-19 in your view? Like Janet has already reserved that part of the question to you.
Thanks. Yes, I mean, I think we're hearing some really common themes coming from all of us,
Yes.
and similar messages, and some of those in terms of what does it mean to be market ready that we're hearing are things like building trust, building confidence. So to any businesses out there, that means that you need to make sure that you know hand on heart that you've done the best you can do to make your product safe and hygiene. And that means also for governments from a destination perspective to ensure that you do meet the standards coming out by WTCC or UNWTO. So building confidence of travelers and key international tour operators is absolutely key. They need to know that both governments and business owners have done everything possible to ensure. And obviously for some of the businesses that requires governments or a regional strategy on what are the health and safety indicators that they need to do. But in terms of being market ready, I keep going back to sort of the whole demand driven approach. And I think for anyone, I want to sort of touch on what Jens was saying. I think for anyone who thinks this is a crisis and we can go back to pre-COVID ways of doing things is wrong. I think pre-COVID climate change, over tourism, these issues are not going to go away. And so I keep saying, in order to be market ready, we need to reset and not panic about trying to fulfill that short-term demand very, very quickly. We all know that there will be this transition, domestic, regional, long haul. But I think, you know, from a government's perspective, in terms of being market ready, it's around health and hygiene, it's around bilateral agreements for travel and opening of borders. And it is definitely about leading a demand-driven vision for destinations, less crowded. The research coming out from McKinsey, from PwC, from everyone on traveler sentiment is less crowded destinations. This is an opportunity for new and emerging destinations to get some market share. We're seeing in this research that travelers want to be outdoor. They want ecotourism, nature, culture. So for businesses and for governments, you need to think about resetting, redesigning your products to think about these trends and what travelers really, really want, the changing needs. And I think the big thing is communicating. In order to build confidence of travelers, we have to do all these operational aspects. But if we don't communicate and we're not transparent, we cannot build that confidence and trust. And that means investing in communications, whether that's marketing, communications, the same thing, but we need to invest in communicating what we've done to build that trust with travelers and with tour operators, our international clients. Yeah, so I think, you know, it's all about trust building and obviously coordinating and collaborating. And again, these are just common themes all of us keep repeating. But yes, we need to reset, not go back to pre-COVID. And those that have the ability to be agile, I mean, this we can't do overnight. You have to be as agile as possible. And those businesses and destinations that start acting now and start making those changes now and are able to be agile will come out on top and be have the competitive advantage.
Thank you, Libby. We have just received a question from one of the leaders of the tourism in Myanmar. And I think you can continue with your answer for that particular question with your current discussion. Let me read it out. It's from the managing director of Myanmar Voyage, Utelwento. He mentioned that 6-in-1 tourism solutions in GMS region and 2020 to 2021 target for domestic as well as GMS for essential travel. And his question is, which markets should be potential and targeted, namely Asia Pacific, European Union, or North America? And that's his question. Which particular geographical sector should Myanmar target?
Okay, I don't have the answer to say go for Australia or go for, because that to me takes us back to the old way of doing tourism, choosing source markets. We don't want to necessarily build a sector that we say we're going after China, we're going after our neighbor Thailand, and we're going after Australia. We need to take steps back and we need to understand demand, predict and project future demand, look at the trends of market segments. And as a few of us have already said, I mean, if you look at the research of what's coming out of traveler sentiments and traveler trends and understanding what they want in the future, less crowded destinations, nature, perhaps soft adventure. So once you've done the analysis to understand, well, what are those priority high value market segments? Then you can go to the next level and say, well, which source markets? But you can't say source market first, because I think that's a very short-term strategy. In order to build a tourism sector that is resilient and sustainable, you need to put in the time and energy into the research and the data and understand the market segments. And to do that, that is simply looking at insights and trends. And there is a lot of information out there already. Mm-hmm. We can share some of those reports that are coming out that particularly for the private sector who are listening, who may find it useful to understand what traveler sentiment and behavior is beginning to look like.
Okay. Thank you very much. As I'm going through a very mind-blowing time, because I'm trying to moderate this panel, and at the same time, I need to study the questions from the viewers. Let me get back on the track again on the planned order of the day, and I'd like Nicole to give us some answers. just a second. Nicole has been helping the tourism in Myanmar, and he was co-author of the policy on community involvement in tourism. And Nicole, you are now or recently has been in Taungji region and helping the communities to develop products. So in the post-COVID era, what are your recommendations to develop CBD projects, and also at the same time we need to observe social distancing? These two subjects is it's a challenge for us. How would you like to give us recommendations on that point?
Not so easy. Also, if we take a look at what has been mentioned by Jeanette or by others, that okay, in the future, probably the market, especially for foreign tourists, will be adventure travel in remote areas, which means, of course, also not only contact to the nature, but also to local communities. But at the same time, the communities needs to feel safe when tourists arrive, and the tourist needs to feel safe. We have a lot of standards who are coming now up for the hotel industry, for airlines, for transportation, but I haven't really realized standards or guidelines on how to meet local people. And this is now something also the heart of tourism, is that we actually want to meet, and we want to meet people from different countries. And of course, but especially those who are living in remote areas, we have to take maybe a second look on this. And we had yesterday within the ITC team, this is those who are working, national and international consultants who are working in Southern Shan State, in Kaya State, and in Tanintari. We had a 2-hour brain session on is there any need now to go back to the community and to prepare the community for the post-COVID time, and what needs to be done. Frankly speaking, I was thinking, oh, after 2 hours, it's simple and easy. We just talk about this 1.5 meter distance and a little bit of sanitizers here and there, and then it's done. But whilst talking, we realized, oh, no, this is much more complex. And starting also, what are the needs of the community? What do they want? Because the feedback we got from our national consultants, for example, was, no, at the moment, the communities there we are normally working with are quite strict and say, no. There's no need to send soon back to us tourists, even if you lose a little bit of income. But we feel safe in our bubble here in our community. And we want to feel safe also in the upcoming months. And first of all, that needs to be taken into consideration. Even if we think, okay, we need to support now CBT projects, we first need to ask, hey, communities, do you really want to have tourists in the upcoming 1 or 2 years' time? Yeah, it's very important. And this is an argument which is coming back now also to the first question. Do you remember about DMOs and destination management? I think what we need to take here also into consideration as important stakeholders in the future are not only the private sector, are not only the public sector. There needs to be also representatives of communities who are somehow linked to tourism, who also play a very important role in destination management, and what are their needs and what are their worries, especially also in terms of COVID. Coming back to our discussion yesterday, actually after 2 hours, we said it's really complex, the whole issue. Starting from boat tours for domestic tourists, how many should be in one boat? Starting into visiting a house, should we really stop it totally or not? Should be just in front of a house? So we have created subgroups, and we plan to continue to work on these guidelines. So I can't give you a clear answer on this. It's just, I think all of us here, yes, we think we need to community is linked to tourism development for sure, but we also need to realize what are their needs and what, and here we need to take a second look on this.
Okay. Thank you, Nicole. I believe the stakeholders from the community-based tourism will find your answers as a way to manage the visitors, while observing the social distancing. Thank you very much. Next, I'd like to invite Jens again. Jens, my question this time for you is, MTCO has launched a number of initiatives in the region, and I'd like to give you an update on those initiatives.
Okay, thank you, Pyo. So maybe for this, I'd like to share a few slides with the audience. Let me just try to do this. Hopefully it works. Can you see the slide?
Very good. We can see it.
Okay, great. So obviously, I think we've talked a lot of about the critical issues that we're facing, and what a lot of people are talking about. I think we all agree that, yes, I mean, trust is a key thing. Health and safety measurements will be something, and we also need to, bring in the community. We cannot forget climate change and so on. But then, obviously, okay, what do we do? What are some of the initiatives that we can drive? And I think as a regional tourism collaboration with the 6 countries, I think we do have some power to work together and to cooperate. One thing that we found out, obviously, on one hand, is that brands or especially small businesses have a harder time now to really prepare themselves for recovery. Obviously, they can take some measurements, as we discussed, but really going out there, I think it really involves a collaboration together. So many of you know, I mean, the regional tourism collaboration of the 6 countries includes, as we said before, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Thailand, Vietnam, and China. So you can see here how travel bubbles, could form through bilateral relationships fairly easy, Now, the first thing that we have done is when this all started is we created a coronavirus update page on our website. We now have 2 pages. One is more around travel restrictions. The other one is more around policies for the industry, what various countries are doing. So this, we're constantly, this obviously is an older slide, as you can see, but again, I mean, this has been quite important because there's a lot of information out there, but this is really focused and concentrated just on the Greater Mekong sub-region, on the 6 countries. The other thing I mentioned before is our Mekong Tourism Advisory Group. We have 80 plus members. I didn't mean to kind of have so many, but we got a great response. We also have, as you can see, many of you know Harry from UNWTO. We have WTTC. We have also Jing, the former director for Asia Pacific, UNWTO. In the middle, we see Ute Yong, very active. So I mean, it's a very diverse group. It's not a collection of CEOs, but we have people that represent child safety, ecotourism, animal protection, WWF, and so on. So you can look at the link and see who is on there, and these people have been very engaged. We also created an online community where we continue the conversation as well. Just last week, we launched an initiative called Mekong COVID-19 Innovations, which we did with in collaboration with Mekong Institute. You can see this page if you go to destinationmekong.com. So this is not just focused on just tourism, but we believe that this crisis, like other crises in the past, drive new innovations. People get creative, because they need to react and respond to various new situations. And why are we doing this? We're doing it really to position the region in creating responses. So there are very creative initiatives out there. And to all the listeners, I reach out and ask, you know, if you see anything, any initiatives that we should add, or if your organization does something yourself. So this could be done by an individual, it could be a startup, this could be also done by an organization, a company, a ministry, government, even partnerships, you know, anything that is there we want to collect and curate. And then Mekong Institute, together with us, will probably kind of publish some of these stories of these innovators and maybe even do some video interviews as well. Many of you have heard of Destination Mekong, which started in 2017. And just the question might be, well, what's the difference between Mekong Tourism Coordinating Office and Destination Mekong? It's actually very simple. I mean, it's aligned, but MTCO is the secretariat for the 6 member countries of the Greater Mekong Subregion. So as a secretariat, you know, we work together with the ministries, you know, organizing the board meetings, the tourism working group meetings. We work with some development partners, but we don't really have either the funds or the resources to actually execute any initiatives. And initiatives that have been done in the past, they are many times not sustainable and have died since, you know. And I think many of our development partner friends can echo that. I mean, many times great initiatives are born because there's funding there, then the funding stops and these initiatives die, you know. So Destination Mekong is a public-private sector framework that has its goal to drive initiatives and operate them via partnerships, but make them also sustainable. You know, so you see some of these initiatives there. You probably have heard about Mekong Moments or the Mekong Mini Movie Festival, which have been award-winning campaigns and drove a lot of content and promoted the region and the experiences internationally. So I just wanted to kind of point out a few things that are really now interesting for this region, and also then the second part tell you about a few initiatives that we're launching. So the first thing is, and I think that's at everyone's heart, is our Experience Mekong collection, which is a curation of 300 plus, now actually over 350 small responsible travel businesses in the region. And even more than that, it's actually what I personally believe is these businesses are what I say the shining light almost of the region. These experiences are the reason why people come to the region, not for these businesses, but to experience something authentic and local, and also in many ways purposeful, that gives back to the community, that makes a social impact. And that's how we curated these businesses. You can go to mekongtourism.org and you see on the top experience collection, you can filter it and you see many of these businesses. And we have, you know, around 50 or so or more in Myanmar as well. Then we created the Experience Mekong showcases in collaboration. Again, it's a partnership, you know, through Mahidol University in Thailand, and together with students, you know, Nicole mentioned before, let's include universities and students. We've done this, and through actually an agreement with Mahidol University, students are involved to produce case studies of these showcases. So we actually recognize 6 businesses, 1 per country, and then the students produce these case studies. This is a 2009, many businesses you know. And now actually 2020, for the first time, we opened up the process for public voting. You know, this is still open until July 1st, so you can go to mekongtourism.org and you can vote, you know, for your favorite businesses. You can vote for as many businesses as you want, but you can only vote once. We already have, you know, over 2,000 votes in. The usability of the voting is not perfect, but I think it's a learning process for us. But I think what's great about this, as now through this process, we're really, you know, kind of getting people involved in getting engaged and connected to these small businesses, you know. So everyone who's on the call, please go to the site and vote, because I think this also shows the support to these businesses. With Experience Mekong Collection, we also have created an online community, and actually next Tuesday we have for the first time, you know, our first Experience Mekong Collection members meeting. which is really around, how can we support these businesses? And then we're looking to bring in people. We've talked to people like Peter Richards and maybe Nicole and other people on this call here, to help. How can we help these small businesses? So Experience Mekong Collection is a corner focal point for us. And obviously we didn't create Experience Mekong Collection for the pandemic. We've done it before. But I think now this program has become more and more important, because we believe that if these businesses die and cannot survive the pandemic, a piece of the Mekong region will die as well. And one of the reasons why people experience the region will die with it. So we created something called Support Experience Mekong Collection Members. This is a very simple initiative where we link out to businesses that have either sell gift certificates or ask for donations. And you can go on there. So it's just basically a collection of these businesses that we have so far. And then you can link to these businesses and either give a donation or buy the gift certificates. Again, this is on mekongtourism.org. Another initiative that we launched is Mekong Heroes. And with Mekong Heroes, again, connected to this, but different, we are recognizing inspiring individuals that have really made a difference in responsible tourism development in the region. This is new, so you can nominate people. We have gotten a few nominations in already. This can be a minister or CEO, or it can be a frontline employee, so anyone that is there. So it's not about title, but it's really about making a difference in the region. So I think it's a very interesting program. And then we want to tell the stories of these individuals. Another thing that we just launched for this year is our Mekong Tourism Innovative Startups in Tourism program, MIST, which is now in the 4th year, which was supported by the Australian government, and we've done in collaboration with the Asian Development Bank. Very successful program. And so now obviously this year we'll probably have a virtual pitching going on. When we had our advisory board call, what actually was interesting, one innovation that came out of this call, that one of our advisors, one investor said, well, we can actually now do these mentorship sessions a lot more frequently and a lot more in depth via systems like Zoom or Blue Jeans or other ones, So I think out of this actually comes some new innovations, how we can help these startups even more. They are in 2 categories, travel technology, but also social enterprises. And if you go to mist.asia, you can see some of the winners, which are very inspiring. And again, this also drives, accelerated recovery after COVID, because we need this innovation. We need these businesses. We need these entrepreneurs that have passion. And so this year, the focus is a bit more on resilience. Now, I wanted to talk about quickly, and I'm rushing through this obviously, what are we doing to really drive recovery for COVID-19? Janet talked about people are dreaming, people are dreaming, where should they go next, And this is actually something that we've been working on now for 6 weeks already. We're looking to launch hopefully end of June, beginning of July. It's not that easy from a technology standpoint, but it's called Mekong Memories. And Mekong Memories basically is a very simple thing. Many of you know Mekong Moments, where we encourage people to take a photo when they're at an experience, or video, put it on their own social media, tag it with Mekong Moments, hashtag, and then we aggregate it, and then we link the photos into the businesses. So very similar. Now people are at home, they don't travel, especially when they're overseas. It'll take a lot longer for them to come back to the region. But now they're going through their phone. They have hundreds of photos of their experiences on their phone, And what we're saying, well, share these experiences. And we're working with various companies. We work with 2 big hotel companies and 3 big tour operators as launch partners. And then we ask everyone to join as well. So it's a very inclusive and collaborative campaign to reach out to their past guests and say, share your experiences and you can win a prize, Now, essentially what we're trying to do is we're creating a content cloud of past experiences of people that were had in the Mekong region pre-COVID, you know. And so this content cloud, you know, it's like an advertisement. The more you see an ad about a shampoo, you know, at some point you buy it because you feel like you have a connection with it already because you've seen it so many times, you know. So again, similar concept. So we want to really flood with these past memories in the region that people have had, that people get excited, and then when they can travel, that they will then choose going to the Mekong region. You know, similar to what Janet just talked about. I think this is something that really kind of aligns to that concept, you know. So people can share their memories, they tag with Mekong memories hashtag, and then, you know, we collect prizes from the various companies that participate in this, you know. I'll jump over this. The next thing, which is a separate initiative, but we're going to connect together as a campaign, is called Mekong Deals. So Mekong Deals, very, very simple again. I mean, there will be a lot of businesses that will have vouchers, discounts, and so on out there. So we're just basically bringing them all together. And then, you know, through almost like you see here, a mock-up of the page, you know, people then can link directly to the business, you know. This, we talked to quite a few companies, and everyone kind of loves this idea and want to be part of it. So this obviously is great for the small businesses, the Experience Mekong Collection, but also, I mean, we're talking to businesses from Accor to Minor and other ones that are really excited to be part of this. You know, so this is something that we launched together as part of the campaign, because we believe that if we kind of just push out deals alone, it will not work in this time, you know. But if we connect it with storytelling, with Mekong memories, it actually might be quite powerful, you know. And through technology, we actually combine it as well. So you might see a memory that is very inspiring, and then it might have the deal underneath, you know, that you can then buy at a discount. Now, the other good thing about this is that these deals are non-refundable. That means that the money goes directly to the businesses and help them survive, especially smaller ones, during this pandemic. Out of that also, we're creating, this is probably going to launch end of this year or early next year, is a new platform called Mekong.travel that combines all these initiatives together into a regional travel site, you know. Now, finally, you know, I want to talk to you about China, you know. So, I mean, obviously China is an important market. You know, I have my own opinion about the Chinese market, having been there and knowing, I think, the Chinese market quite well. But I believe if we look at segmenting and if we have a smart strategy for China, it actually can be very powerful. Now, what we're going to launch is the destination virtual travel mart. You know, so this is a technology system in partnership with Destination Mekong, MTCO, and Dragon Trail in China, to allow companies to basically present themselves like in a travel mart and then connect with buyers. So just to kind of show some research, as I mentioned before, you know, so C-Trip says that 5 out of the top 10 destinations for post-COVID-19 are in Southeast Asia, you know, Thailand, Japan, Singapore, Vietnam, Dubai, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Australia. So now you don't see Myanmar in it, you don't see Laos in it for Myanmar, but again, you know, if people are looking at Thailand, you know, and if we're promoting the region overall, automatically, you know, Myanmar will be part of the package, you know. So that obviously is very powerful to recognize, you know. So sometimes Myanmar, Laos don't show up in these rankings. It's also because of numbers sometimes, because, you know, the numbers are not that big, but percentage-wise, you know, it obviously is significant. But again, you know, if we promote the region together, you know, as really a travel bubble, as a safe travel bubble for Chinese travelers, I think it's a huge opportunity, you know. So now, how does it work? It's really, you know, powering Chinese buyers development through a WeChat platform. So the whole platform is actually connected to WeChat, which makes it very unique. So normally these kind of travel agency e-learning platforms or so on that, you know, one thing they do is, which is not sustainable, they connect with actually the travel agencies per se, you know. So how this system works differently is that basically they have the WeChat accounts of the individual travel agents. So if Nicole works for one company today and for another one tomorrow, still Nicole is connected to the system, you know. And it's also about the individual, because the individual will go through the system and will connect and will build the business. Because many times, you know, these agents are almost like freelancers working, you know, for these companies, you know. So what's included? I mean, it's a virtual travel show. We've seen a few of them. It's matchmaking, but what's unique is this is probably the only system that's dedicated to the Chinese market, you know, with the most connections, you know, with travel trade professionals in China, actually over 50,000, you know. And then we have also real-time big data collection, you know, which, you know, will also be very powerful to learn, you know, what do Chinese consumers want, where do they want to travel, and what are their issues. I think Libby mentioned before, data is important, and this will be a platform to collect this data for one of the most important source markets. So here's just a snapshot of you know, the connections that will be within this platform, you know, so very powerful. There's nothing like it for the Chinese market, but we're also looking to potentially in the future extend this platform to other markets as well, you know, potentially the Indian market, maybe to European markets, so on. But now we'll start with the Chinese market because it's most relevant, you know, for post-COVID. So it's a virtual exhibition experience, you know, it's an exhibition map and then a seller booth. So very similar to normal trade shows. So you can see here a map. So you could see, it says South Africa. This could be obviously Myanmar, you know, Peru could be Laos. And then you have the different destinations you can drill down, and then any business, you know, from a hotel to a tour operator to a restaurant, it can have, from an attraction, can have their own virtual booths in there. And then, you know, the buyer can connect directly, you know, through this virtual platform then with the company directly, and then do matchmaking and appointments, you know. So this, we might do some campaigns or might do a virtual travel mart per se, but the idea is that really this is open 365 days, you know, so really for buyers and sellers to connect. And we said before at the beginning, I think one thing that's important right now is to build these relationships, you know, to make sure that these buyers can communicate to their consumers, to their clients, that the Mekong region is the place to go. It's safe, it's experiential, it's purposeful, and that will drive it. With normal campaigns, it will not be possible to really market to the Chinese market for two reasons. One is it will be very competitive and very costly, you know, because a lot of people will just put in money, and you know, KOLs in China are still quite powerful, but nowadays if you want to work with KOLs or key opinion leaders, the bloggers of China, it's a very difficult and also expensive undertaking, right? So we need to differentiate our strategy when it comes to that, you know, and then, you know, we can actually compete against destinations that have a lot more money to really go into the Chinese market than us. Now, finally, I want to talk about Mekong Tourism Forum. Right now, Mekong Tourism Forum is scheduled for August 25 to 27. It's in Bagan, Myanmar. It's hosted by the Ministry of Hotels and Tourism. And we've obviously have been working with the ministry very closely over the last few months. I've been actually to Bagan the first time, I think it was in September, with Mr. Lamint from the ministry. Then we, you know, first it was scheduled for April, then we moved it to August, as I just mentioned. And now here today, I actually announced that the new date will be February 15 to 16. So this is the first time we actually say this. We're gonna send out a press release. Actually, I'll probably send it out right after this webinar. But you're the first ones that hear about this. And why? Because I thought this is the Myanmar industry. You should hear first. and I talked to the ministry, and they agreed with us. They're probably on the phone or on the call as well. So I think why February 15, 16? Number one, I think we decided that August, end of August will be too early. Even if travel resumes, it I think will be too early for people to feel comfortable sitting in a room with 200 to 400 people. So I think this will not happen, and then the opportunity to really promote Myanmar internationally will not be happening. February, I think we believe it can be possible. Obviously, no one has a crystal ball. We don't know what's going to happen. It might not be possible. Maybe we'll extend it again. We don't know. But we believe that February could be a good date. And this also will be the right time to look at then the recovery and rebuilding of tourism in the Mekong region. So I think it will be a very important Mekong Tourism Forum. We kept the theme the self. We didn't change it to rebuilding Mekong tourism, but we believe that this recovery needs to be balanced. So that's why we kept it with achieving balanced tourism. So obviously, I think soon you can go to mekongtourismforum.org. The agenda will be a little bit smaller. And obviously there will be measurements in place. We'll be working with the ministry. We're working with other MICE specialists to make sure that health and sanitation measurements are in place, that everyone can feel safe. But I think personally, it will be a very exciting Mekong Tourism Forum. And I'm happy that we're able to do it in Bagan and in Myanmar, because I think it will be the perfect destination to restart tourism in the Mekong region. With that, thank you very much. Again,
thank you, Jens.
Hear more about our programs. You can download a booklet. Here is the URL, bit.ly/Mekong Tourism 2020. I think the Mekong Tourism Marketing Association can share that link. And again, that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, Jens, thanks very much. I'd like to thank all the speakers and viewers for your continued patience. I would like to thank Jens for the elaboration of the initiatives of the Mekong Tourism Coordination Office, and I hope the forum in August will bring also a lot of beneficial outcomes for Myanmar.
In February 15th.
Sorry again?
The forum will be February 15th.
Yes, I understand. Okay. I'd like to invite now Libby. Libby, can you please attend to this question from Mrs. Vicky Bowman? Vicky is the director of the Myanmar Responsible Business Center, and she has raised a question. Let me read it out. What about travel insurance? Are the plans for international insurers to provide cover for COVID-19 related risks? That's another difficult question, and I'd like to give it to you now.
Thanks, Vicky, for the difficult question. Well, I guess the fact is that insurance, when you look about what travel insurance is really is about guarding you against future and unknown events. So what happened when COVID-19 was declared a pandemic, and the travel insurance said, well, it's known, so therefore anyone who's purchased travel insurance after this date, and in some countries it was the end of January, in some countries it was February, and as early as March, it varied from country to country, therefore we won't cover you. Mm-hmm. So the future though is that insurance companies are saying that some will and some won't cover you. And it will come down to cost. So if you're prepared to pay an absolute premium and also you meet the criteria of some travel insurance companies, you may be able to be covered. But it comes again, it'll be by country. Every country's travel insurance regulations are different. But one thing that is universal is that generally speaking, travel insurance is only there to guard you against future or unknown. The second player in travel insurance is obviously travel advisories. So that the travel advisories come out of embassies, and if an embassy or a country says that they advise against all non-essential travel to a destination, whether it's subnational or an entire country, then any travel insurance, generally speaking, from the country who has issued that advice of saying you can't travel there or we recommend you don't, then travel will not, insurance will not be covered. So I guess my message to Myanmar is that to have a very good relationship with those embassies, to ensure that the embassies are getting the right information and the right level of confidence, because often these travel advisories are made at the country level, not sitting in London or Washington or Canberra. So yes, but the travel insurance industry is obviously trying to adapt as much as possible, but it'll come down to price. It'll be country by country, and the big player will also be travel advisories. So once the travel advisories lift the blocks on travel, then travel insurance is valid.
Thank you, Libby, for giving your insights on this particular question from the professional point of view of the travel insurance. Next, I'd like to invite Nicole to give an answer to Go Women, again from the Myanmar Center for Responsible Business. He raised a question that we have been talking about focusing on domestic tourism and sustainable tourism. Given your experience in Myanmar tourism and destination management, what are the issues we must take care of in creating responsible travelers and managing the destinations properly? What are the roles of tourism organizations like MTF, MTM, and UMTA in the process? Thank you for taking it. Unmute. 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 You need to unmute.
Thank you for this complicated question, which I'm not able to answer within two sentences. I think, but you came up with a very important topic, mentioning two terms, responsible tourism and domestic tourism. And I think what is needed, especially also by the associations, but also by MOHT, to think more, how can you create now domestic tourism also in a more responsible way? We need to have, I think, an updated look on the responsible tourism policy, which has been done also in cooperation with COPIO, for example, in 2013, where we came up with 9 action points. And I think we need more action points now, because the situation in Myanmar is totally different. So I'm coming back, what is needed, I'm coming back to the idea, let's have stakeholder meetings, roundtables, and discuss about how can we really implement now responsible tourism here in Myanmar, not by focusing only on international tourism, but as well on domestic tourism.
Thank you, Nicole, for taking this question up. Another question has been raised by our friend Achim Munz from Hanseiter Stiftung. I'd like to channel that question to Jens. Jens, Achim asked, one of the barriers to travel is the quarantine. Any ideas on that?
Yes, I think that's a very interesting question, because obviously when countries open again, but there is a quarantine in place of 14 days. So if I want to go, let's say, go to Siem Reap for a weekend, but I have to be in quarantine for 14 days, it doesn't really make sense, you know. So I think it's a very good point. I think one option is to look at what Iceland has done. You know, so Iceland actually is going away with the mandatory 14-day quarantine, and they kind of pass a free COVID-19 test at the airport for arrivals, and then basically people will get called if they are if they test positive. So I think if that's combined with the pre-test, you know, to have some kind of health certification, you know, before they get on the flight, which already reduces obviously the chance of being infected, you know. But then looking at maybe this Iceland model, and maybe some of the speakers have more information about that, but I think I've read about it, and I thought this could be an interesting solution, because obviously I think, you know, if I go somewhere and I have to go in quarantine for 14 days, I think it doesn't really make a lot of sense. And I think this will not be a recipe to open up tourism again.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your answer. I think it's already 3 o'clock, and we need to close the panel now. And I'd like to give each of you parting notes, starting with Nicole again.
A lot for inviting me for this very interesting session and forum. I'm looking forward really to come back to Myanmar, but let's see. I think all of you have realized it's not so easy at the moment. We still have 500 infected cases per day in Germany. So I do not know, yeah, because I think also you want to feel safe at the other end when I'm going to arrive. But anyhow, looking at the post-pandemic time, I think what all of us have learned here, we should not go back to the business as usual. We need to focus more on digital marketing. We need to focus more on DMOs. We need to focus more on communication and cooperation. And the market will be different, and it's more related, especially also, for example, to nature. But if it's to nature and if it's related to experiences, I'm always saying, let's keep also the communities into our mind, that they need to be integrated in all these kind of planning processes. Take care.
Thank you, Nicole. And Libby, please. Libby.
Yes. Thank you. Nicole, you did such a brilliant job of summarizing and wrapping up. But I really think my key message for everyone listening is to use this pause, as I've said, to really focus on understanding the market. Use this time to read, there is plenty of research out there, even if it's not directly related to Myanmar. There is plenty of research out there to understand traveler sentiment, traveler behavior, and be as agile as possible. So I think we've gone through understanding what the impacts are. All of us know that it's pretty bad. But we now need to put our energies to the future and to resetting how we want a more sustainable and resilient future.
Thank you, Libby. And again, lady first, Janet, will you say some words?
Yes, thank you for the panel. The good news, the tourists will come back and they will travel again. They're dreaming now. So use the pause to make them dream about Myanmar. So that is the country where they will book when the country opens up again. Thank you.
Thank you. The last gentleman, Jens, please say a few words.
Thank you for inviting me to join this panel. I think it's been an honor being on this panel with such esteemed professionals. I hope that we all come out of this pandemic better than before. I think it's a great learning experience, and I think it's an opportunity, as someone said before, to really look at what has gone wrong over the years with tourism. I mean, over tourism still in December was, I think, the most used buzzword when it comes to tourism. So I think with that, I hope that we see everyone in Bagan in Myanmar at the Mekong Tourism Forum in February 15 to 16. And I also hope that many of the ones listening will join us in our various initiatives with Mekong Tourism that I just presented. So please, anyone who's interested, just contact me directly, and we're happy to answer any questions and see how you can get involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Jens. Once again, I'd like to thank all the speakers invited from the various international organizations and our development partners. We really appreciate your time and efforts and your sharing your experiences and knowledge with the stakeholders in Myanmar. And I do believe the viewers will pass on their thanks through me. And we would like to see you in Myanmar soon, very, very soon again. And last but not least, I would also like to thank the technical team behind the scene, making sure that this panel is seamlessly organized. And we really appreciate that they have done a very good job. I'd like to bring your attention to the part 10 of the panel on Monday. It's unlike the previous ones. This one will take place on Monday, the 1st of June. And the panelists are U Tin Lat, His Excellency U Tin Lat, Deputy Minister for Ministry of Hotels and Tourism, and His Excellency U Aung Naing U, Permanent Secretary from the Ministry of Investment and Foreign Economic Relations, and His Excellency U Wing Khan, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Transport and Communications, and His Excellency U Yemin U, Vice Mayor of Naypyidaw and Chairman of Naypyidaw Sibin Bank. And that particular finale will be moderated by our chairperson, Domi Myamawin. So please do not fail to attend to that part 10 of the panel of the Myanmar Tourism Marketing Association. And I'd like to say goodbye now and take care of yourself. Things are looking up. Don't despair. Post-COVID era will be yours, all of yours. Bye-bye.